thank you for making time for me today, Miss. So may I ask if you can introduce yourself before we start the interview?
Hi, my name is Vera Luna Evi. I am currently doing my teaching practicum here in Malacca. I am teaching mathematics and also science.
I see. So for this interview, we will mainly focusing on language acquisition. So how many languages that you know and you can use well in a daily conversations?
In a daily conversation, I mainly use Malay and also English, but if you're asking about the languages that I can speak with my friends, I usually will speak in English and also Korean.
I see. Thank you. So based on the languages that you fluent in, what encouraged you to learn these languages?
I think it's simply because I am very attracted to their culture and the way their language sounds. It's very interesting and also very attracting, in my opinion, because it sounds, as you know, Korean sounds very different from our language, Malay, and also very different from uh, English because it has its own symbols. That's why I am very attracted to like learn how to use, how to speak, and also how to write the language. As for French, I learned the language because it's very similar. It's almost very similar to English, but it's still very different. It has like its own distinct way of how we pronounce the words and also how we write the words. That's why I was very attracted to learn how to speak French. And as for Japan and Chinese, it's also because of how we write the how we write each word and how we pronounce the word. That's why I choose to learn all these different language because it's just very interesting and also attractive to me.
I see. What strategies or technique help you in the most in acquiring these languages?
The strategies that I really love using until now is just listening to songs and try to sing along with it. And then after I learn how to sing the song, how to actually pronounce each word, I would always look for the meaning of the song. So in that is how I learn how to actually speak and also how to understand what that song is all about, and that is how I learn each languages.
I see. So as a person who learn approximately around six languages, what advice will you give to someone that is trying to learn a new languages?
My advice to someone who is very interested in learning new languages is to familiarize yourself with the language, as in try to watch like lots of dramas, lots of listen to lots of songs that is in that language, and just familiarize yourself with the language. That is how I learn how to speak and also how to understand what what each words means.
I see. Thank you. So, since you learn six languages, there must be some experience where you experience language interference. So let me explain briefly what is language interference. Language interference is when basically your first language or your second language that you acquire, they've gotten mixed up, you know. So in Malay and English we call it Manglish sometimes. So how
Yes.
do you, how, what is the experience that you face in this kind of situations?
In this kind of situation, I usually it's a bit funny because I sometimes know that words in either English or Korean, but I don't know the words in Malay. So it's hard for me to like tell my students um, like what I was talking about, because I remember that word in certain language, but I don't remember that word in language that I shared with my students. So they have to be they. So it's like it's very obvious how um, knowing different language can interfere with sometimes interfere with my career. So I had to like okay I have to use simple words that I know and I can remember that word in Malay, so it's easier for my students to understand. That is what I usually experience. And the same goes for the other language. Sometimes I know that word in Korean, but I don't know that word in maybe English or Malay.
I see. So do you think knowing multiple languages changes the way you think or perceive the world?
In my opinion, it does change how I perceive the world because um, in learning a new language, you also, as I've said before, you also kind of dived into their culture, into other people's culture. That is how my view of that country or people around that country change because by learning their language and understanding what they are talking about in either um, any of the shows that I've watched or any of the people that I've met and talked with, um, learning their language sometimes just helps you understand them better. So when you understand someone better, it is easier for you to connect with them, to converse with them, and to also understand them the way they think. It also affect the way I think about them because I know every single words that they said. I understand what they are talking about, and I can I can help them with whatever they need help with.
So thank you for making your time today. I appreciate all the answered questions. So hopefully we'll be meeting soon for maybe another interview. All right. So thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining my interview today. Um, First, before we start our interview, may I ask if you can introduce yourself first?
So, okay, let's continue. So, thank you. So, my name is Joshua Dawalis, currently finishing my internship and waiting for graduation. A TASO student like you as well. And yeah, what else? I think that's it.
So today we'll be doing interview about second language acquisition. So what I want to know is how many languages that you know and can use well in everyday conversation.
So, if you talk about languages that I know, there will be around like six. So it's like the English, Malay, Chinese, then three mother tongues, which is Murut, Lundai, Lun Bawang, and another one would be a little bit of Hokkien, Cantonese, like that. They are the Chinese dialect. But if you talk about languages that I use for everyday conversation, would be just English, Malay, Chinese. Sometimes if I meet family members from my mother or from my father's side, we speak Murut, and sometimes if we go back to Sarawak, we speak Lun Bawang.
I see. So I think you already mentioned this briefly before, but I need to know your strategy or your technique in helping you. What helped you the most in acquiring these languages?
Well, number one would be have a strong community. When I mean by a strong community, in a sense that where the environment that you live and breathe and speaks in that language. In that way, not only you will get used to it, it's hard at first, but when you get used to it, you're suddenly fluent in it. So with that strong community sense, it helps to actually learn the language. Another one is that no direct translation. There is no such thing as direct translation.
Yes.
The reason is because that sometimes when you direct translate, especially when you're trying to learn it in English or in Malay, the tata bahasa or the grammar doesn't make sense. So when you try to learn the language in the sense that you're trying to learn its grammar first, is actually very hard. actually the wrong way, where you're supposed to learn the terms first. When you understand the terms, and then you will be fluent in it. The last one would be internalization. When I mean by internalization, I mean by you internalize the language or the terms that use, meaning that when you learn the language, you get to picture how it means. For example, if people were to say hua is flower. So people can say, okay, it's easy because we've seen flower before. But when it comes to advanced terms, you have to internalize it so that you can picture and have a sense of, okay, I think I can get used with this term, like that.
I see. That is a good way on explaining the techniques that you use. So, as a person, for example, me, if I want to learn a language, what advice would you give me?
If you want to try learning a new language, number one would be try know the community. I've been stressing this a lot, but having that community makes a big difference. Meaning but then it doesn't mean that you have to look for the community. Maybe you can create that community amongst yourself. Let's say you and your friend you want to learn a Korean language, and then you have some friends that want to learn Korean. So you can create that community amongst you and your friends to always try to speak Korean when you meet each other. So that is one of the strategies. And then another best strategy would be internalizing. Like I said just now, you can internalize it when you try to vision something, and then another thing is that try to get used with the language. Try to get used to it, because when you yourself get used to the language, even though you can't speak it, but when you listen to it, you can understand. So that's are a few ways I could say when you're trying to learn a new language.
So I see. So community is important for someone to maintain proficiency in the languages, right? So have you ever experienced language interference? And
Um. Mhm.
what are your
And what?
actions in facing those interference?
May I understand what interference means? What do you mean by interference?
Because sometimes a person that speak multiple languages all at once, when they meet another person that is multilingual as well, you tend to mix those languages, like
Mhm.
the slang, put some word
Mhm.
inside this in English, for example. So in this, it tends to break your proficiency level.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that is what I meant by interference in the languages.
One of the way to actually help out is that um, you try your best when you're talking with somebody who's multilingual. You try your best to actually have the same view, same the point of view. Meaning, in a sense, like you're trying to speak in English, so you yourself have that point of view or have that goal to like, okay, I want to speak fully in English. Same goes with your friend. So if that mixed up happens, you cannot influence your friend. So what you can do is just keep on talking. Like for example, if you were to speak Manglish with me, and
Mm.
then I say I want to fix my English. So no matter how tempted I am to speak Manglish with you, I will always try my best to always speak in English, like fully proper English, like that.
So, for the last questions, do you think knowing multiple languages change the way you think or perceive life?
Yes, very much so. Because not only we talk about talking, when you know multiple language, you know the lives of that language. You know the society and you know how each languages live. You know how the English people live. You know how the Malay people live. You will also know how the Chinese people live. When you know the society behind the language that you speak with or you know about it, you have an open mind about how the world works. I give an example where as Malaysians, we always think that okay, as Malaysians, you always think that okay, orang Melayu will know that the culture of Malay, the Malay culture. But when you know Chinese society and you know the discipline behind the Chinese moral, the Tizukui, the philosophy, the Chinese philosophy. So it helps you to open up and to learn and to see some things. And then sometimes certain terms is not the different languages perceive differently. For example, if you know Korean, you always think that okay, beautiful must always be beautiful, must always be skinny. But then when you know Chinese, Chinese have these terms where there are places where it's supposed to be big, there are places where it's supposed to be small.
Mm.
So it's supposed to show where you don't have to be skinny to be beautiful. Some places are meant to be big, some places are meant to be small. So that's how, when you know that certain languages have their society or have their philosophy behind it, it opens up your eye to see those things.
I see. So that is all for this interview.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeho, for making time to do this interview. Say hi to Miss Lulu.
Hi, Miss Lula.